Barry and Breaking Bad are identical genre. Whatever genre one is, the other one is. A juggler doesn't have to know physics to do the juggling, and the physicist doesn't have to do the juggling in order to know the physics.
That's, by the way, what I think journalism school should be.
These laugh masters, like akin to Zen masters, sort of like, maybe wander the land or are available on a mountaintop for people to come and be like, help, what is laughter? And they don't tell you how to laugh because that's not how you get someone to laugh.
There's no, board of governors that defines comedy. Let's suppose there were. Who would be the good comedy certification unit?
Ow, I'm excited.
Hi, welcome to Funny You Should Mention, the show where I, Myq Pesca, talk to comedians about the ideas informing their comedy. So the original conception was comedians, they're like the new op-ed writers, but with jokes. But my guest, Myq Kaplan, actually mentioned this at the front of his new comedy special, Rini, that comedians, they're like philosophers, right? Are they really, though?
Great question. Maybe you're the philosopher. I mean, truly.
Oh, that's just a taste of the deep inquiry we're going to get into. Yes.
Yes. I mean, I think that I think about this topic of like what is a noun and what nouns do what verbs, like to be, what is a writer? One who writes? Okay, yes. And then professionally or not professionally, what is a comedian? How many times have you had to get paid to do comedy to call yourself a comedian? And these things are all relative.
Well, for someone who actually has authority to call you comedian, because yes, people self-define in different ways. Yes.
Absolutely. And I'm generally for self-definition for anything where, like not for doctors, like for some jobs, there are like certification processes that we as a society so far generally agree, like you're not a doctor unless you take these steps.
Or you're in a band and you call yourself Dr. Teeth or Dr. Hook, or there is a band exception, I think.
I mean, you can...
And the medics, I don't think he was a doctor, maybe a botany.
You can call yourself those things. I mean, like the Dr. Pepper, the soda, is not in any risk of being confused for medical doctor. Though there was a Dr. Pepper, a medical doctor who was sued by Dr. Pepper, I believe, once, and he's like, no, but this is my name, and if he started making soda, they would have had a case, but he's a medical doctor. This is all to say, philosopher is like, sure, if you have a PhD in philosophy, arguably you're a philosopher. Though also, I just read this book by Susanna Clark, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Have you read that one?
Yeah, sure.
And in it, they discuss like the differences between theoretical magicians and practical magicians, and like the
practical magic.
Yes, theoretical magicians were ones who didn't do magic. They only like studied it. Like they were like PhDs in magic, but they're like, oh no, they were like the physicists describing the work of a juggler.
Yes.
And like a juggler doesn't have to know physics to do the juggling, and the physicist doesn't have to do the juggling in order to know the physics.
That's, by the way, what I think journalism school should be. It shouldn't train journalists. It should analyze journalists and say that's a good piece of journalism. No, I really do believe that. Now, on the Dr. Pepper front, on the Dr. Pepper tip, as the kids would say in 2004, I used to drink Mr. Pibb. Do you know Mr. Pibb?
I do.
It's like the cut rate Dr. Pepper, but I also like the fact that he didn't have highfalutin aspirations. He didn't claim to have gone to medical school. And then there was a member of Congress named Claude Pepper, and I wonder if Coke or whoever owned Dr. Pepper could sue this Dr. Pepper. Was Claude Pepper open to lawsuit from, say, McCormick Pepper, or the spice maker of the pepper, McCormick being the only brand I know?
Great question.
These are all the questions.
My answer is Mr. Pibb, please. That's my father's name. And just to put a button, there'll be many buttons, but one button in the question of...
This will be a spangled interview, my friend.
What is a comedian a philosopher? So what is a philosopher? I think that you do not require a degree to be a philosopher. Right. There's no specific governing board. I mean, there's no governing board for comedians nor philosophers. And so I do think that what makes someone either a comedian or a philosopher is in the doing. What do you do? Yeah. And like the question of, do people, I mean, there's so many people who watch, I've been doing comedy since 2002. I've been doing it as my only job since 2008. And there are still people who comment on my videos. Like I had one recently, like about, I mentioned in it that I'm a comedian. I mentioned in my joke that it was like a TV set. It was a late night. So I think I was like, I said I'm a comedian. after I told a joke because I think it's funny to say I'm a comedian when people theoretically should already yeah, you don't have to you understand. I don't
Context clues. Yes, exactly.
Do you know the Grecian maxims? Have we talked about these?
I don't know yet.
H. Paul Grice,
Yeah.
or H.P. Grice, or Paul Grice, or simply Grice, which is...
Come on, Grice. Pick one.
Here's the thing. It's funny that his Wikipedia page has all of those listed because his maxims are basically descriptors of standard human communication and how it operates. The four maxims are the maxim of quality, quantity, relation, and manner. So,
Oh, yes, I have heard this. Yes, this is important. Right.
And so in ordinary conversation, when you're talking to somebody, you can generally agree with and we're not talking jokes, we're not talking lying, we're talking, people in good faith communicating, trying to understand each other. Most of the time, you're going to tell people quality is you're telling them the truth. Quantity is you're giving them as much information as they need, but not specifically more, which is why Paul, HP, H. Paul is all in there, and that's funny. Relation is you're telling them something relevant. Like if somebody said, is John home? And you said, well, there is a green car in front of his house. That should mean that, well, he has a green car, probably. We both know that. Otherwise it would be...
And his body is in it.
Or just he hasn't gone anywhere because his car is there. And then manner is that it's not hazy. It's clearly it's not obscured. And so jokes actually do play around with these things like how many months have 28 days.
And the answer is all of them.
Right.
Yes.
Which is the Grecian answer is it's one, stupid. Shut up. Come on, get out of here with that. Or do you have the time? Yes. We understand.
Right. If you say yes, are you answering the question or not? And Grice would say, on these rubrics you are, and on these you aren't.
Yes. Letter of the law versus spirit of the law. And so I said I'm a comedian, which I think flouts the Grecian maxim of probably quantity. I don't need to say that. You already have that information by the fact that I am doing comedy on this late night comedy show. And still in the comments, I don't know if you ever read an internet comment, but
they're usually very constructive. They give me my best ideas.
Absolutely. I mean, that's all that we need. If only the world were only internet comments. But what would they be commenting on? But somebody...
Isn't our president a reply guy?
Heard me say. Somebody said... comedian, words have meaning, pal. And I went back and forth with him for, I think a few other people sort of were like, he definitely is a comedian. I mean, you don't have to think I'm a good, here's the thing, it's you don't have to think I'm a good comedian, and you don't even have to think I'm a comedian, but everything is relative to some degree, but compared to most people, I'm a comedian. And he says words have meaning, pal, and I'm like, what does the meaning of pal have to do with this?
Right. And you could come back at him with, what are you, a lexicographer? And then the answer would be, I have no idea what you're talking about, thus proving that he's certainly not a lexicographer. Now, as to the question of philosophy, you don't well, maybe you call this out as philosophy. There is the paradox of the heap, or as it's sometimes called, and I thought this was named after a philosopher, but it's just named after the Greek word for heap, the Sorites paradox.
Yes.
And so this is the idea, and this is, I know what you're doing with this, Myq. I maybe know what you're doing with this even more than you know what you're doing with this.
Wow, I'm excited
to
learn what I'm doing.
What you're doing with this is, first of all, let's define the paradox, which is essentially, hey, that's a heap of sand. We all know that. Hey, that's a grain of sand, but not a heap. We all know that. Okay, in between, when's the grain or collection of grains become a heap?
Because at any point, if you add or take away one grain, almost all of the time, that doesn't change whether it is or is not a heap, but it does have to change at some point. It's sort of like, I feel like it's related, at least spiritually, there's a parallel to the wave-particle duality of nature. Like, it's a wave, it's made of particles, or, notes in a melody, And so, that is the paradox.
Right. Are we a collection of atoms and all this? There are some pursuits in life where we actually arbitrarily, but we answer that question. So when does a child become an adult?
18.
On what day? And that's the day often, or, depending on
21 for drinking,
or depending on the age of consent in Kentucky, 12.
Oy.
But I had Ariel Elias in here and she would like that joke. We have joke lag.
Yeah.
But what I think what you're doing, and even if you're not, you were doing it subconsciously, I think you were Sorites paradoxing of the heap in a way to comment on the fact that you've become monogamous. And when does a polyamorous relationship or a polyamorous person become monogamous? And it's not at one point. It's not when that third person or eighth person fails to show up. It's what the paradox of the heap really gets to is that life isn't defined clearly in binaries, or there aren't black and white truths. And so it really gets at the nature of this middle ground. And I think your special is very much getting at the nature of non-binaries, not literally non-binary in terms of sexuality, but not binaries and not living life with binaries.
Absolutely. I think that I have thought about that, perhaps not as explicitly defined as you just made it, but absolutely, like this special is about, how many, like, when does a relationship become a marriage? In some states, at 7 years.
Yes.
Like that is when you have a heap of relationship. And so, yeah, the show does sort of, I think it's, more thematically connected, even in sort of these ethereal, philosophical ideas, to the, the real life, relationship, personal situations that are going on in my life. There's two things I want to say. One is about the Guinness Book of World Records. I'll come back to that. The other is the question of when does something become something else really, there's a few different things. Okay, I'm going to talk about when the letter P turns into the letter B in a moment.
Okay.
And that'll also have to do with a rainbow color spectrum. But also,
I love that you're providing the guide for this. Maybe on the side we'll have this, or maybe, I encourage everyone at home to just take notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they know Guinness Book is coming up.
Yeah.
That's the tease. We're going to tease that over the break, but go ahead.
And also, not even super connected on purpose to the Guinness Book of World Records named for the same Guinness as Guinness beer, I do not drink alcohol anymore. I mentioned before the show, we discussed we're recording this at night, and so Michelle generously suggested, nighttime is beer time, so would anyone like a beer?
She's pushing it on me like that, yeah.
I haven't drunk beer, and I haven't drunk alcohol like on purpose, with awareness in at least 6 or 7 years.
So that's your record.
And that is my...
That is your Guinness record.
Here, real quick thing, I forget the name of this kid, but a kid at my summer camp that I taught stand-up comedy workshops at for many years and still do. I think one of his parents worked at SNL, so he was around comedy, and he had a joke. I wish I remember his name, but he was 10 years old, and his opening line on stage was, "So I've been sober for 10 years." And so truly, my earlier record was about, I think I had my first sip of alcohol at 13 or 14, what have you. But that question is, so I feel like the point that you make is really interesting when it comes to when does an alcoholic become sober? And let's say they stop drinking, and they're like, okay, it's today, but what time? Okay, is it right when they took their last drink, or is it when they made the decision to do it, or is it after a certain amount of time that it kicked into gear?
Yeah.
And the same thing for starting comedy. So many comedians, when you ask them how long have you been doing comedy, I'll say that I started in 2002, which is when I really started pursuing it and going out to open mics.
Went on a stage and there was a mic.
I mean, but I did also get on a stage and there was a mic at a comedy club in 1999, but I was pursuing songwriting at the time. So I was going on with funny songs, but I wouldn't have called myself a comedian until later, when I look back and I was like, in between those songs, I said things and people laughed. I was like, that was my first comedic performance, but so many people don't count that. And that also has a parallel to this special, which at one point we were titling Before We Get Started, but then Ryan Reese produced a documentary that he was working on the whole time, and I'd forgotten that I'd had him on my podcast, and I went back and listened. I'm like, oh yes, I announced, yes, everyone check out Ryan Reese's documentary. It's wonderful, about warm-up comedy called Before We Get Started. Right. But our show we were going to call it that before we decided on Rini, because we've been together now almost 9.5 years.
You and Ryan Reese? No,
yeah.
You and Rini.
Almost. I was like, no, it's not pronounced Ryan-y. Yeah. Ryan Rini. Rini and I, we are not married at this point, but we do plan to be together forever, as, we're going to stay alive forever. That's our plan. Unless we decide.
Unlike John in the green car, where we found his body. But go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we we get questions a lot from people who don't entirely understand that we know what we're doing. We're there. We're together. Like, the piece of paper isn't the most important. One of the reasons we're not getting married is because she has better health care, like through the not job that she has right now than she would if we got together, and then she had to pay for like more catastrophic, worse health care. Anyway, the point is...
Your dowry is to damn her health care. Yes.
And so when people are like, when are you going to get married? Like, as if that is the true starting point of a life together, and that all of these 9.5 years are just before we get started.
Right.
So this is all that. Now, the baby.
I got to ask, okay,
please,
wait, we got Rainbow
in.
Baby,
Yes.
Guinness book, but when people ask you, when are you going to get married, are you tempted to answer, like, when did you start doing comedy? Well, I've started getting married 8 years ago.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
I'm going to start saying that now. Oh, yeah. We absolutely started geting married in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of I did a show the other day, and I forget what led to this, but... do you know the song "Sheep Go to Heaven, Goats Go to Hell" by the band Cake?
Oh, no. If it's a cover of an existing song from the 70s with a vibra slap, I'd know it because
I think this one's
their oeuvre.
Yes, this one. Yeah, it is. It's not "I Will Survive."
Oh, it's a good one.
But they do a wonderful job. This one, the lyrics that are meaningful are. As soon as you're born, you start dying. So you might as well have a good time. Sheep go to heaven, goats go to hell. And so I think, I was on a show. This is what had happened. I'm glad. Another comedian had talked to the audience and had something about Jesus and his, like, what happened on either, like, we all know what happened for Jesus on Christmas, and somebody in the audience says, yes, he died. And so they got it wrong that they said, technically he didn't die on Christmas.
Yes.
But I was
he
like,
wasn't even born on Christmas, Right.
Yes. But at least in, the common error,
Sure.
that people believe he was born
You mean
on
era
Christmas.
or error?
I said error, but yes. I meant to evoke both. Yeah.
Nice.
I did not make an error with that one.
That's pretty good.
And thank you very much. So if he was born on Christmas, in the spirit of Cake's sheep go to heaven, goats go to hell, he did start dying on Christmas, the same way that Rini and I started being together and started our life together, started getting married. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Started getting there to marriage in 2016. So, as you may know, I studied linguistics in college and grad school, and one of the things that we learned was that, one of the ways that you can tell when a baby, the way that they sort of assess what a baby knows is by if it, like, is bored and not paying attention, or if it, like, perks up and looks. So if it perks up, they're like, oh, something is new.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, any adult human being, certainly, if we're looking at, like, a color spectrum, you're like, there's red, there's orange, there's yellow. It's absolutely, like, when does it turn from red to orange to yellow? Like, perhaps it's different for everyone.
That's another paradox of the heap. Yeah.
That exactly. But with audio, a weird thing is you can take a p sound, a p sound, and a b sound and make a spectrum from p to make it more and more b-like until it gets to b, from the p to the b that we know. But our brains can, when you're listening to it, when a baby is listening to it, and when an adult is listening to it, you will not hear it changing. You will just hear p, 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 and then at some point, b.
Yes.
So it's just another example of, like, at 18, you're an adult. At this, that happens.
I think that's what happened with the pronunciation, or the herd pronunciation, of Pakistan. Because when you ever hear a Pakistani, they say Pakistan, more likely.
Oh, yes.
And so I think Pakistan's going to become Pakistan, but I don't know how. I don't know who does it. I know that Mumbai and Bombay, right? So that's not a P to a B. I know that one way to change geographic names is the president comes in and says Gulf of Mexico, but I don't think that's going to happen with Pakistan. But it probably will evolve.
And I mean, even within our country, like, I grew up calling it Oregon, and then go there and they say Oregon.
You think it really, like, people who have live in states that pronounce their own states the wrong way are really, really proud of it.
Yeah.
They'll let you know about Nevada. You say Nevada wrong. And another thing that I find out is that there are all these cities in the United States named after the original city, and with the exception of Paris, Texas, they get them all wrong, or someone gets them wrong. Like, it's Lima, Ohio instead of Lima. Oh no, it's Lima, Ohio instead of Lima, Ohio.
I mean, it's not like they're calling Paris, Texas.
They should. But that fits in with the normal Texas accent.
But it's such an interesting thing because, of course, like, Germany, we call Germany, they call Deutschland, and in French it's like Allemagne,
Yeah.
And so, like, there is all ultimately, there is no underlying like true name reality. Like I don't know if you've read any Ursula K. Le Guin, The Wizard of Earthsea series, wherein like
she's
the
like
power,
this great black futurist. Yeah.
And this one is like, the sort of the original like wizard school island. And one of the ways that wizards gain power is they learn the quote true names of things. And when you know a person's true name, you can have power over them. When you know like the true name of like every water molecule, then you can control the ocean or the weather or this. And in reality, like we certainly, if there are quote true names of anything, we don't, all the names are constructs, humanly constructed. Every word that we're saying like originally didn't exist, and then at some point somebody's like, I move my mouth like this, and then we understand it to mean this, And man, there was a great comedian, a writer as well. I think what was his name? Julian something. Julius Sharp. I think he wrote for Family Guy and some other things. He had a joke. I think it was his joke where he comes on stage and he says, something like, now I don't speak English. I just memorize these sounds. And
great.
At a certain point, like I don't know what I'm saying, and like a fun bit, but a fun bit that's like kind of like uncannily valley-like near to reality. Like certainly for languages that we don't know, we don't understand them.
Right.
For languages that we do know, it's magic.
Yes. Although there are the onomatopoeic words, which are at least dictated by the actual sound, your rustles, your whistles. And I've often wondered if, and maybe you have an answer because you did study linguistics, if the bodily functions, especially one-syllable bodily functions, I think they almost are all, or at least have elements of onomatopoeia. Your retch, your Ralph, your puke, I think, your piss, maybe your fart. When they get into the nice way of describing it, your vomit, certainly not.
A lot of the things associated with the nose or schnoz are like sneeze and snooze and sniff, So there's some kind of
snot.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Yes. Okay, rainbows.
Okay, so that was the color to the spectrum.
That was
rainbow's taken care of.
Okay, and in a moment, we will talk about the Guinness Book of World Records. Stay tuned for more Myq Kaplan. We're back with Myq Kaplan on Funny You Should Mention. We're now talking about the Guinness Book of World Records, as per the tease.
Yes. So somewhere 10-ish years ago, give or take a couple years, I was in Nashville, Tennessee I did this, I think, 2 years in a row. They had the World Guinness record for longest comedy show, not one person, longest continuous comedy show. I believe it lasted for like a week, give or take a day.
And Rehad's trying to do that this year, right?
Oh, that sounds right.
No, that's like they bought all the comedians over there. And I know you proudly say you're not going.
I mean,
you have good human rights records.
I do my best with human rights.
You're very good.
Thank you. And so the way, here's the interesting thing, because for the most part, like, what's a comedy show? You got comedians, you got an audience, but also some comedy shows have like a musical break or like could have a different, an intermission. For it to be a Guinness World Record breaking comedy show, there were like some of the rules that I remember specifically. Were like there always had to be at least 12 people in the audience.
Okay.
If there was under 12 people, it no longer qualified.
And when you started, that would be bad news for you when you were starting out, or most comedians.
Absolutely.
If those didn't count as shows.
Nothing doing. I've done wonderful shows for one person, two people, every single digit number of people. In fact, here's a fun joke that I rarely do, but I did and it won't work now because of the setup. But imagine everybody stop listening to whatever I just said. Do something else. Okay, we're back. Look, I can do it too. And you remember the movie Twins from the late 80s? Am I right? Late 80s? That's a fun bonus. The movie Twins, sometimes I'll ask an audience, who here has seen the movie Twins, who here has not seen the movie Twins, usually a mix of people who have not. I'll tell you, one audience I had earlier this year, in February of 2025, I performed at a venue. Every single member of the audience had seen the movie Twins, and all it took was getting the right 6 people together. Okay. So the point is, that's
why twins with that joke? Why twins?
Oh, because there's more to the joke. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the ultimate joke.
It would be awesome if you tried it with like 7 different Schwarzenegger movies, and like Twins was the one that hit.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you briefly. The joke the reason that it's twins is because Rini, it's actually related to Rini and my love for Rini. So very actually glad that you asked this question. There's no way you could have done all the research to know this. You are a very good journalist, so maybe you dug deep. So as you may know, and for any listeners who are younger and don't know the movie Twins, you don't have to watch it. But the basic idea is that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito are identical twins.
Right.
But
And if you don't know that, Danny DeVito is a very small person and Arnold Schwarzenegger is a very large person, and at the time with very clearly defined muscles. Now he's a little more blob-like.
yes, officially at the time, he was like the most in shape man in the world.
And by implication, DeVito was maybe the last, but we didn't say that because it would hurt his feelings.
That was the idea. And theoretically, I feel like if I could be like the spirit of either of those, like Arnold Schwarzenegger is actually saying some really interesting, meaningful things these days as well. But Danny DeVito, like across the unassailable record of humanity. I can assail Schwarzenegger's a little bit, but he's like slightly assailable. But
Sure. I saw Pumping Iron. He was mean to Lou Ferrigno and also a couple initiatives as governor. But go ahead.
So the idea is that they're identical. Why do they look different? Like all of the good stuff of the genetic material went into Arnold. All the bad stuff went into DeVito's character. And the analogy in the joke is that Rini is perfect. Rini is the Arnold Schwarzenegger spiritually of reality, of our universe. And that is why there is suffering everywhere else in the universe, because all the goodness went into her. And we're like, really sorry, everybody.
It's interesting. If there was a religion where there was one perfect God, I guess Jesus is supposed to be perfect. And what if, as a rational reaction, the idea is we had to kill the perfect God because we had to redistribute the perfection? How dare that one person take the perfection, rob us of all the goodness? Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun. I think
Wouldn't it be cool if in that religion Jesus were not crucified but killed via piñata, and then it could all be distributed?
Piñata Jesus.
Jesus.
I think we've got something here. We have
that's a cake lyric, if
new
nothing
religion
else.
right after this. Yeah. So one of the other rules was for the show, for the Guinness World Record-breaking show, was that there had to always be, a comedian on stage. Like you couldn't
That seems fair.
Couldn't have a band for
12 arbitrary, but 0 comedians on stage. They're in a comedy show. I'm with that.
Right. And so here's the thing: is I don't know how granular they got about obviously it was not one comedian for 8 days in a row. 3 a.m., 7 a.m. Comedians could come and go and be allowed to sleep, but there were different hosts. And so in between, the host would be like, all right, I'm bringing up your next comedian. And there was definitely some time, where you could, how slowly could you walk to the stage and have it still be, count as a comedian on stage doing comedy. And as part of my set, I sort of questioned also how long can a setup be? How long can you go in between punchlines? Because there are some shaggy dog stories that have a really great payoff. And so what about riffing? I'm doing stand-up, right now I'm kind of then and now I'm improvising about how I improvised then to get to a point where at some point, am I riffing too much for Guinness? And at that point, when I say, am I riffing too much for Guinness? Arguably is a punchline, riffing too much for Guinness, everyone. And so I'll just keep saying that, everyone. So that's my get her done for the thing. Riffing too much for Guinness, And so, but the question, it's such an interesting thing that I feel like this, sort of touches on genre of okay, at the Golden Globes, what's a drama? What's a comedy?
Sure.
And this is
Lil Nas X's entire career.
And
was he country? Was he hip hop? Yeah.
And the thing is about genre is usually there to help us, to be oh, do I want to see a horror movie or do I not want to see a horror movie? But for comedy, comedy can infuse everything. And here's my hot take, Mike. I claim that Barry and Breaking Bad are identical genre. Whatever genre one is, the other one is, because they're both so funny, so powerfully funny, but more than funny and dramatic. There's such good, it's such high art that but we're oh, but Barry, it's half hour, so that's a comedy, and Breaking Bad, that's hours, so that's a drama. But they're the same amount of pathos, the same amount of laughter, and not always laughter, really, horrible things happen, and then we're laughing the next
Yeah,
minute, and then your Tim Robinsons and Nathan Fielders now sort of creating new flavors of like comedy, art, tone, like what genre even is it? And so the question when Guinness is like, okay, but it's a comedy show, right? So there's got to be comedians. Well, so we know what comedy is when we see it. It's like porn in the 60s.
Yeah, because we have a good malt beverage. We are the arbiters of comedy. With genre, music is like that too. And I've read a lot about how music there are no genres. And I don't even mean this in the ethereal sense. And, a great musician in one quote unquote genre will be influenced by others, and you can see it there. But they are inventions of music marketing. And the idea that since music goes back throughout all of culture, the idea that there would be different genres of music up until someone started selling music a couple hundred years ago would be very confusing to most people, right?
Yeah, I had a friend in college who I wish I remember what culture this was about, but he studied like an anthropology class. He told me about a culture that did not have like the word music. It did not have it didn't even have the concept of music because their entire society was infused with music. It was like they were fish in water. They didn't know what water was because they were swimming in music, the same way that in our society, like with a classic, go into a courtroom and they're like, oh yay, oh yay, oh yay, like the court is now in session. Like that's rhythmic and melodic, and it's like, a mantra of a kind.
Right.
And so their whole society was just like, you got one of those for the grocery store, you got one of those for the bank, and that's just how society works. And I think, with
our culture, what do you think the water is? Because people will say, just like a fish doesn't know it's in water, so too is, I don't know, white supremacy. But then they name it, and you can't name water to a fish. Like, you can't grab the fish and say, water, this is water. So once you name it, it's the thing that you were talking about. You give the secret name to something, and the secret is gone.
I think it's enlightenment. I mean, I think that there's many, many words for it. Like, have you heard of Raymond Smullyan?
No.
Raymond Smullyan
Does he have 6 different names on his Wikipedia page?
No, but he's got 6 different jobs.
Okay.
He was a philosopher.
Yeah.
He was a logician, a magician, a mathematician, a student and teacher of Eastern philosophy.
So a logician is someone who installs a LoJack or is like does like really bad magic?
That was very LoJackal, Mike.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the night of the LoJackal. But go ahead.
And so he was like a cultural figure. He would go on Carson's Tonight Show and talk about philosophy and do magic tricks. And I first came across one of his books called just a used book section of a Barnes and Noble in New Jersey.
What's his name again?
Raymond Smullyan.
I'm pretty sure I have heard of him actually, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, here's some of his books. The Tao is Silent, Alice in Puzzle Land. The first book I read of his, I just caught my eye. 24 years old. It was This Book Needs No Title.
Yeah.
And he has another book called What is the Name of This Book?
Yes,
and
know them both.
Discusses like logic, puzzles, and tricks. And in This Book Needs No Title,
what was the name of that book?
Great question.
It was Alice in Puzzle Land. Yes.
There was a story in it that you can Google the story. It's available online. The story's called Planet Without Laughter, I believe. And it's an analogy. And when I was like 24 years old, this is like pre any psychedelics. And so I understood that an analogy was being presented. And the analogy was basically like, imagine a world where laughter, people have heard of it, but no one really knows how to do it anymore. But there's these like laugh masters, like akin to Zen masters, like that. It's like that laughter is a parallel to enlightenment or like some sort of mystic wisdom or spiritual awareness that is the thing that I would say is present, like that, Buddha, the term Buddha means awake. And people say, Buddhas will say everyone has Buddha nature. Everyone is just not currently awake to the fact that they are awake. And every once in a while, maybe you have a moment where you're like, oh, there it is. And then you're, oh, well, now try to get it back up. It's gone. But in this story,
if only I can remember the guys who recorded "Whoop, There It Is" because they had that moment.
Tag team.
Yeah. There it is. It's in the lyrics. Yeah.
We good tag teaming. And so back again. I remember them every once in a while because
shakalaka shakalaka shaka boom. And when they write those lyrics, they're like no shaka maka shakalaka, and there's a big debate, and then the tag team breaks up, and one goes with Hawk and one goes with Animal. But anyway,
they nailed it. I came up a joke I wrote long ago ago is I would love to see a Whoomp. There it was, a retrospective. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a little like Can I Get a What?
Yeah.
Which you reference in the special.
I surely do.
Turns out that it's in, and you can get a What?
I
In
think
fact,
so.
Amazon has them for like half off
They've
on
got
Prime Day.
Yeah. They've got things that you've never even heard of until you heard of them.
They have a whole section of questions. You could get a Who's now. You could get a...
So, in the story, Planet Without Laughter, these laugh masters, like akin to Zen masters, sort of like, maybe wander the land or are available on a mountaintop for people to come and be like, help, what is laughter? And they don't tell you how to laugh because that's not how you get someone to laugh. They would be on stage and they would like do a backflip or say a non sequitur. And then sometimes a person in the audience in the story would be like, oh, I understand laughter.
Yeah.
But anyone who knows what real laughter is could then spot if somebody's like, oh, right, laughter. Ha, 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 ha. I get it. Ha, 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 ha. And so when I first read...
in the book, they would genuinely be laughing.
I mean...
They wouldn't be just expressing
some people...
through their voice sound.
The people who got it would really laugh.
The
people who didn't get it, which was more people in the story, were trying to do the physical thing. They were like, what... And that might be akin to like people trying to get closer to, Nirvana or Satori or like heaven or a Christ-like experience or Buddha nature.
What is that state in meditating that you're not supposed to try to achieve? It's like something with a J, Janet. You know it. You're not supposed to strive for it, but if you get it, it's great. But
I'm not going to strive to remember what it is.
Don't even try.
There's one of those.
No, the Laugh Master General, who you reference, and then you also reference there's no board of governors that defines comedy. Let's suppose there were. Would it be like the panel on Last Comic Standing? Who would be the good comedy certification unit?
I have an answer to this. To an answer to a question that is adjacent to this.
Okay.
And I hope adjacent isn't the word that, So adjacent Zinnemann, that's like next to the New York Times comedy writer. So I have been doing comedy since arguably 2002, possibly 1999. I have been, living and breathing, like I listen to so many comedy albums and watch so many specials and read books about it. And
just to cross off ideas that you can no longer claim.
I stopped reading.
You're so attuned to never ever ripping someone off, never plagiarizing, that you have to imbibe the whole world.
That is one way to do it. I really did for a while stop reading The Onion regularly because I'm like, they did all the jokes. They have all the jokes. I got to I can't do any of these jokes. So I got to do my own jokes. But I think there are people like me, like, who care about comedy, like perhaps even more. There's people who care deeply about it. Like Dave Attell is a guy who I hear, like when he comes up with an idea, he runs it by like, a bunch of his friends to be like, have you heard anything like this? And that's why his jokes are not like anyone's jokes. He is a singular being for that reason. I think there are many, like Maria Bamford, a singular being.
Okay, so that idea of who he runs it by, that could be the comedy board, you're saying?
I'm almost there. And okay, another thing from earlier that'll tie into this as well, like the question of genre in music we talked about. Like I think there are obviously uses for it to be like, oh, jazz, like, weird jazz, fusion, like big band jazz, and etc. But like
jazz has 300 subgenres, of which they each have one practitioner and one fan.
Oh yeah, ultimately there's as many genres of art as there are artists. But also you could be like, okay, I understand why people, when they hear about Stephen Wright and Mitch Hedberg and Dimitri Martin and Emo Phillips and Wendy Lieben, they're like, well, at least their jokes are like the same length, These are like, let's go genre by length,
That's fine.
Like ultimately in comedy, I mean, comedy is unlike so many other, this point has been made by many, that like you can go to a comedy club not knowing who you're going to see, but you would never go to movie house and be like, just whatever movie is playing, give me, you at least want a genre. You want to, if not usually a specific movie.
Right.
But for comedy, people are like, so I always wonder,
People don't roll with it well. Sorry to interrupt, it's
please.
the only way I get it with word. People don't roll with it well when they're confused about genre of a movie. Remember the movie Vanilla Sky, which was a remake of a good Spanish movie, but it was very poorly received. I think it's an excellent Cameron Crowe movie, but the reason that it's poorly received, I think, is that people had their expectations upended over the genre of the movie.
Quick funny story about a different thing. The Stephen Sondheim created musical. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
Yes.
A comedy.
Yes.
When it first was released.
Yeah.
Bombed. People did not understand that it was a comedy. He got a note. I don't know whose idea it was, but they were like, you got to tell him, and that's why he wrote the first song, Comedy Tonight.
It's Comedy Tonight. Yup.
And then once he told them that it was comedy, then like, perhaps it was like me on that late night show being like, I'm a comedian. Oh, okay, finally we can relax and understand what the genre is. And so
this is an opera in front of every opera.
Nailed it. And so I think in comedy, like, you know, you want to, if you're listening to this show, you probably have like some savvy and some knowledge about what comedians you like and who you're going to go see or where you're going to go.
Susceptible to compliments. Yeah.
Yes, you're wonderful. You're beautiful. Yeah. You're
fragrant.
You're wise. Yeah. Oh, you smell the best.
When Myq made all those references to linguists, he was like, yes, of course we know.
And so I think about like somebody like Reggie Watts. Like what is he? What art form is he doing? It is comedic. It is musical. It is art.
Bobby McFerrin in there.
Yeah, I would say, you know, if you had to say, which you don't, performance art. He's Reggie Watts. Like there's
right.
My favorite line from Lenny Bruce. The only one I can remember always is, "I'm not a comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce," and that's like the ultimate goal for, I think, many artists is to
Calvin
be like.
Coolidge said that also, though.
Yeah, he said, "I'm Lenny Bruce."
Yeah.
That checks
well, his
out.
life lived it. Remember, when you asked how long can you live between punchlines, Calvin Coolidge answered that question with he only said one joke ever, so we don't know. It's still ongoing.
I love it. And so the question of who the governing board of comedy arbiters is here's, if I ever wanted to go see jazz, I might look it up, look up like where are jazz places in New York, but I think the best way to find out, who do I know in my life who loves jazz? Who do I know in my life who does jazz? And then if I can like sort of crowdsource like a bunch of people, like who do you think the best jazz artists are? And then go and look at interviews with them and say, who do the people who think that the best jazz artists are, who do they think the best jazz artists are?
Right.
Eventually you'll get, I think, like, in comedy, if you do that, you'll get a lot of people, like Stephen Colbert says it's Maria Bamford. I say it's Maria Bamford. Many people say it's Maria Bamford. Many people say it's Dave Attell. Many people, you'll have a few list of names that get, as you keep, doing iterations, it's sort of like ranked voting.
But you'll never actually get to the jazz show if you do that much research.
But
the band has left town.
We're not trying to get to the jazz show. We're trying to philosophically determine who those people are. So for right now, we've determined, for me, it's Dave Attell, Maria Bamford, and Reggie Watts. That's
awesome.
Yeah, those are three people.
I love those three, and they represent a whole bunch of different forms of comedy, and a lot of them, each of them has a little bit of a psychedelic element in that, jokes are benign violations. You're not supposed to know where they come from, but they really don't know where they're coming from with all of them. That's interesting. I wanted to ask you about the Attell thing.
Yes.
I would think the harder thing, even for a brilliant and askew mind like Attell, is not to know if anyone's done it before, but to know if this slightly weird observation is funny. Like, from what I understand with Stephen Wright is he would have many, many askew observations, and he would think they might all be funny, but he has to present them to an audience and see if they laugh.
Oh, yeah.
It's not true with Attell?
Great question. I know for Stephen Wright, he specifically has said if he tries something 3 times and it doesn't work, then he'll stop doing it, not because he doesn't think it's funny, but because he understands that the audience doesn't agree with him.
Yeah.
And, funny is another thing. Like, what is funny? Funny is also relative. Like, if you're the only as long as anyone thinks it's funny, including you, then it's funny to you. If you're the only one who thinks it's funny to you. And then, obviously the role, the task, the job to do the job of comedian is to hopefully find an overlap of people agreeing with you that those things are funny. But for Attell, I mean, I don't think that's the only thing Attell does. I think Attell is also, of course, like he must only be thinking about, I don't know if he does this for every joke as well. Like I've only heard this as sort of like a snippet of an anecdote, because Here, have we ever talked about Verlyn Klinkenborg?
I know Verlyn Klinkenborg.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you know his book, Several Short Sentences About Writing?
No.
I read that book and I love it, and I recommend it for any writer of any kind of, any creator, any artist.
It's funny that a guy named Verlyn Klinkenborg would be known for being terse.
It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like one of those things, he's like Batman as a child, a bad thing happened to him, and he's like, I'm not going to let this happen to anyone moving forward. Yeah.
Not going to Klinkenborg you.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, everybody, you can, short sentences, here we go.
You would think Uthant would write that book about being terse, but go ahead.
And so one concept in that book that has stuck with me is the idea of volunteer sentences. He says, like, if let's say you're writing a book, and if a sentence comes to you easily, like it could be that it's, being channeled through you from the universal source, like from which all great art comes, or it could be something that you heard and forgot about. And so he's like, if a sentence comes too easily, maybe double check that it is your original idea and not somebody else's. I think that may be what Attell is doing. If an idea comes to him and he's like, is this me, or is it possible that I picked this up somewhere, or just, I think this is good, but I just want to make sure that somebody else didn't get to it first. I think anything that he's asking somebody about, he thinks is funny. He knows is funny and good to him. And then when he's, assured enough that it's as original as it can be, he brings it to audiences and hones and shapes it.
Now, I will say whenever a defendant takes a plea deal, it's something of a volunteer sentence. A little coerced, but something. I have several important questions to get to you in the limited time we have.
Yes.
Which here on this earth. One is, if I just thought of this, Myq, and you're a philosopher, so if comedy didn't evoke an involuntary response, which also released endorphins, so like your sci-fi story, there was something and it was appreciated like almost every other art form, like art hits you, art on the wall, like music hits you. Without that involuntary plus endorphins, I think something like comedy would exist, and I have an idea in my head. Do you, and what would comedy be like?
Oh, that's an interesting question and a good question. And to me, a good question is one that I don't know the answer to immediately. So
We'll just put it out there for the audience. Here's what I was thinking.
Please.
I think it would be the difference between art depicting beauty or beautiful people and pornography. Which is not to insult comedy, but, some pornography could be argued as art, but there is that involuntary reaction, and that involuntary reaction signals some chemicals. I don't know that pornography has the intellectual component to it, but maybe comedy would be more intellectual, or maybe it would be more like the comedy that comedians like, which is they don't laugh, right? They go, that's very good. It's more heady and it's more transgressive also.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. I think that's all very fascinating. And that last part really resonates with me, that when I started doing comedy, and I was just even before I was a comedian, when I was still a musician, occasionally performing at this comedy club, I remember one time I went to watch a show there, and I was getting ready to pay the guy at the door, who was just another comedian working the door, and he was like, "You've performed here, haven't you?" I'm like, about to hand him money. I'm like, "Yeah, I performed here twice." And he's like, "Well, then you're a comedian, you can go in."
That's awesome.
And I was like, without paying money? He's like, "Yeah, comedians can just come in and watch the show for free." I'm like, I'm a comedian? And so I feel like at that point, I felt much more like a comedy fan. I did not identify as a comedian. I did not believe I was a comedian. I was not even trying to be a comedian, but he was like, you did you performed at a comedy club, so you were a comedian enough that I don't need your $10. And he had similar definitions, or a similar commitment to definitions as the Guinness people. Absolutely. Yeah. He had some metrics.
Yes.
And but at that point, I laughed. I have a new definition that I just stumbled upon, and it's going to be Heap paradox related as well. But at that time, between 1999 and 2002, before I officially decided to start going to open mics all the time and really committing to doing comedy, I I laughed so much. I laughed so much at these shows. Like there was this guy, DJ Hazard, who I saw at my college and then all around at the Comedy Studio, all around New England. Anytime I would like go see him, I was like a fan and like became friends with him when I started doing comedy. But like, I was like, he just made me laugh. He was the first person in person to make me laugh so hard that I understood what comedy was. And I was just like dying, crying, just alone, like in a room. Nobody else had to be there. I was just like so enraptured. And eventually, you know, over the course of time, you do comedy. It's like growing up, like my summer camp days as a teenager, it was this magical wonderland. And then I would become a counselor there, and it's still a magical wonderland, but I'm like, you know, one of the wonderland teachers now. And so like I'm sober, you know, you're all having, you know, the ayahuasca like experience, and I'm like, I got it a little bit.
You're the
like
guide.
I got it enough. But eventually, like, you know, it's the beautiful thing about comedy is that still there are people and things that make me laugh so much, but not on the regular basis that like not every comedy show, every comedian, every moment, like the first comedy show that I ever saw or the first year or two. So I think when does the Heap switch from not a comedian to yes, a comedian is when you go from laughing all the time to saying that's funny from the back of the room much more frequently and 100% meaning it. I think that comedy also, it basically is music, you know, like these are every tone, we could be auto-tuned, and like everything that we're saying, like a podcast is music, any sound can be music. So comedy, and I come from, you know, parents who are music teachers and started playing music when I was 4. And so I feel like there's a musicality to everyone's comedy as long as they're making sounds.
Yes.
And so the question is like, what even, like, we're not even genres within art forms, but art forms themselves. Like the question eventually becomes meaningless. But I think comedy becomes, without that thing that you're saying, absolutely, it becomes. It's not even just that it's intellectual, like, because it's still, there's a feeling to it. It's still like, oh.
Yeah, just like music, yeah.
Or like
music,
magic as well.
Okay,
like when you're watching like a magic trick, you know, that great Pete Holmes joke, I think, about how there should be a sound that, like laughter, but for when a trick impresses you.
Yes.
But yeah, like when you see an incredible, like, oh my God, like, because there's a feeling, and it's like, you know, they say like the Raymond Smullyan book, the Tao is silent, and the Tao Te Ching says, like, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao, but there's a feeling that we have that cannot be named, but we try to give name to it, we try to give voice to it, we try to give sound to it, and it sometimes sounds like laughter, and sometimes it sounds like that's funny, and sometimes it's just, ooh. Like,
maybe I'm too crass. I always thought the Tao that could not be named is the NASDAQ. Anyway. Okay, so here are the next big questions, and we're gonna land on it because this is where the special lands. What is your relationship to the word or concept of uxoriousness? Did you think it should be pronounced uxury, like penury?
You know, I'm going to say number one, incredible word, and can you define it for me?
Excessive love for one's wife. Now, in your case, it wouldn't be wife per se, but
she's wife.
Yes, you exhibit uxury.
Yes.
Now, it's weird. There's no such love for the husband, just like there is an avuncular, but not the similar one with ant.
An antular, yeah.
Right. Antular. So I think of you as embodying that trait and that word, and you seem very, very happy with it. I wonder if we did a SoundCloud on how often that word was said, if it was said complimentary to the person or in a description that's a little pejorative. So if you're a guy who really, really loves his partner and wants everyone to know it, sometimes that's derided as wife guy, right? 100 years ago, it would be called uxorious. It doesn't usually have a great association.
It's one of my favorite Duran Duran songs, Uxorious. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I understand the pejorative nature of these like words and concepts. But yeah, I mean, and I understand, like, in a world where, like, I am very fortunate.
You're like the voiceover guy?
In a world, I'm in this world. I am very fortunate. I mean, I'm not without my, you know, challenges and sorrows and grief and such, but I have a fortunate, I had a decent upbringing. You know, I was sheltered and fed and, you know, raised.
And went to camp and became a camp counselor. Two hallmarks of success. Yeah.
So many things. And so I absolutely absolutely understand like that when, what I have, I'm very grateful for what I have. And I understand that there are people who, on some objective measures, have less luck or less, success on these certain metrics. And so I can absolutely understand why a person, if somebody is unhappy with their wife, like wife guy, I get it.
I think wife guy is happy with the wife, but everyone else looks at it with suspicion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, because also like, I think this is also from Taoism, the idea that like, there's all these sort of like combo, like these like contradictions of like, he who makes predictions does not have knowledge, and he who has knowledge does not make predictions, or he or she or they. And similarly, so I feel like along those lines, like there are people who are like, if you're happy and you know it, keep quiet about it. If you're happy and you know it, like be aware that there are people who might not be as happy. That's a me.
Happy and you know it, but, don't clap your hands or
like that's
clap
kind of
one hand.
Kind of obnoxious.
Yeah.
Clap one hand 100%. I give you a Buddhist one hand clapping standing ovation. And so I truly, here's a funny thing, which kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation. You've done a wonderful job. With respect to because I was married in my 20s monogamously, because that was all I knew at the time. I'd only heard of it. Actually,
she's the only woman you knew?
I only knew one woman.
That
and
makes
so,
sense. You're going to marry her.
Yeah. That's why Adam and Eve, of course they're going to be monogamous.
Yeah.
Like the only
if
of you
I got
around.
a girl for you, said the serpent. Yeah.
And it is part of you. Yeah. I love me. But, I only knew...
I love me some Eve. No, listen, I love me.
I love me. Some Eve. I love some me. Eve.
I'm going to get me some, which is another one of your jokes.
I like... These are fun bonuses. Bonus tracks here. But yeah, growing up, I was susceptible to societies and, fairy tales and like pop cultures, basic, pro-monogamy propaganda.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll do that. That's what people do. I'll do that. Yeah. And then I did it and I was like, that didn't do it for me. Yeah. So maybe it's not for me. And that's when I, in my late 20s started exploring. I was like, maybe open relationships make logical sense to me. Polyamory makes sense. So I had varying relationships, in that vein. And then it's funny because there's like some adults in my life who, like my manager at one point was like, he's like, 20 years older than me, at least 10 to 20 years older than me. And he's like, when you meet the right person, like a lot of people like, when you meet the right person. And I'm like, I don't know if that's how it works. It doesn't work like that.
Could be when you meet the right people.
Yeah. And I have many friends who are happily, thrupled or the like. And people only hear about, open relationships for the most part when they fall apart and don't work. There's many people successfully, quietly leading happy, non-monogamous, ethically non-monogamous lives. But the weird thing is when I did meet Rini, we met and we, at first, like many dating situations, we were not exclusive initially. And then after a certain point, this is a longer story than I'll do, but, a year later, we moved in together and we, at a point, and for most of our relationships, have been monogamous. And it's because now, like, my desire in wanting open relationships in the past was because, in part, fear-based. It was like not wanting to miss out on some of like something big that life has to offer. And now, like, Rini is the biggest, best thing that relationship-wise life has offered me.
So you are monogamous because that's how you live your life. But is it like you're sober? You actually, are you sober? You just don't drink. You are perhaps polyamorous. You're just only with this one person right now.
That is a good question. I think I subscribe to Dan Savage's like sort of structural definition of polyamory as opposed to an identity or, orientation based one. So I think for me, there are many things. And, if for you it is the other way, go for it. Have a great time. For me, I do think that I think I am not sober, quote unquote. In part because I still sometimes do psychedelics, but I don't drink alcohol in general. But also if somebody was like, come on, do a toast for this thing, I'm like, sure. I've never had a rock bottom. I say sometimes I've had, a few rock middles, enough that I'm like, I'm just going to stay at the rock top. I'm not going to dip back down to the bottom of the rock. But with respect to my relationship, here's a based on that Lenny Bruce joke that I like, sometimes I say
The only one you like?
Yeah, the
Or no?
only one I know. Yeah, the one that I love. I'm monogamous with that Lenny Bruce joke.
Your relationship to Lenny Bruce's comedy is to that one woman you knew and married.
100%.
One joke, one woman. That's for me.
And so just to recap, in case people don't remember, I'm not a comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce. And so Rini and I, we are, we've been together. We're in our 40s. We've been together almost 10 years. We are quote unquote boyfriend and girlfriend. But I'm like, does that even make sense? Like it's another terminology. It's another genre of relationship. So I say we're not. Like I'm Myq, she's Rini.
Yeah.
We're not boyfriend and girlfriend. We're Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
And we are Myq and Rini. And so I would say though, I am monogamous, and I'm more Rini-agamous. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Bill de Blasio's wife, I forget her name, she said that essentially. It's like, no, it's not that I'm bisexual. I'm Billsexual.
Yeah.
I like women and just Bill de Blasio, which confused a lot of people because of definitions of sexuality, but also very specifically because of Bill de Blasio.
When I'm like, my relationship with Rini is unlike any that I've ever experienced, which is, one of the ways that I know that it is the exciting, like all genre experience thing. Like there's this Alan Watts quote about how like life itself is every genre, like it's comedy and it's drama and it's, hopefully not too much horror, like maybe a little porn, whatever it might be. I forget the quote. It's a great quote. Look it up. But with respect to like, do you know Adam Mastroianni, the science writer?
Yeah. I like his Substack.
I love it a lot. There was one where he talks about the way that sometimes people try to give like relationship advice, which does not acknowledge that everyone's relationship individually is absolutely going to be different. He's like, it's like describing a movie as if all movies are the same, and you're describing your relationship. You're like, you're gonna love the part when Tom Cruise jumps out of the helicopter, and the other person's like, I don't even know if Tom Cruise is in my relationship movie. And so my like lifelong relationship with Rini, it's just like I love her so much because she is so wise and kind, and so both kinds of complimentary, but mainly the kind of complimentary where we have like, I'm good with time and she is good with space, so like she is an incredible like dancer and a kinesthetic like thinker and a visual operator. She can Tetris everything into our tiny home, and I can be like, oh, that looks nice, and she's like, oh, I put that there 6 months ago. Like, oh yeah, I'm sure I noticed it right now, but I can help us get to the airport on time.
Yes.
And so we have just all of these ways that, so many ways that we overlap, and then so many ways that are like just different enough that it's just this, this beautiful, like, like a double helix of each of us creating like the perfect relationship DNA.
If I could ask you 3 quick questions and lightning round this. 1, what is your opinion of Louis Malmud?
Never heard of him.
He's the cantor whose name is listed behind you in the special.
Then grateful that he cool. It's a real cool place. The Actors Temple Theater. I'd never heard of it until our producer found it, and it looks incredible. It looks unlike any comedy special that I've ever seen, and it is both a functioning theater and a synagogue, and so, but one with stained glass that makes it look church-like as well. So it sort of evokes exactly what we want in the way of like a wedding or a marriage or something, holy and spiritual could happen here and is happening here.
Yeah. Is it just me, or have other people told you they didn't notice the stool until you used it in your act?
I think so, because that stool in particular, it's smaller and like kind of blended in, with the.
But it's there. I went back and watched. I'm like, how did that happen? It was just there the whole time.
The whole time. Yeah. And that stool, I want to say briefly, it was a gift from the Gidio family, and Rini has been, since around when I met her, she started being friends with this woman, Toby Gidio, who sadly died, I believe, just over a year ago from cancer in her early 60s. I think it was just over 60. And she was like one of Rini's best friends. And I think and hope, we definitely thanked them in the thing. And like, I feel like I'll say now, we dedicate it to her. And she is, she was just like, a beautiful like friend and being. And Rini when we were thinking about what kind of stool to get, Rini was like, oh, this one that's in Toby's home would be like perfect for like the vibe and the aesthetic and the fit. And then her family was like, of course, take it and have it. And so it became ours. And I think it's another kind of like a perfect confluence. I would rather Toby have lived and kept her
it's
stool.
not worth the stool, yes.
But since that, it didn't happen.
Thanks for the clarification.
Glad to have the stool. Thank you.
Also, you're throwing people off the suspicion that it was you that done her in for the stool.
I did not do it, yes.
So the last thing is, and maybe it's a very big thing, but you can answer it as tersely as you want. Different comedians often talk about their wives and or their partners. Mm-hmm. And the classic one, Henny Youngman will insult his wife or partner. Sometimes that wouldn't play as well to go straight at that now, but there's many person who's essentially insulting their partner. Yes. Then there's Rachel Feinstein, who gets so much mileage out of being married to this fireman, and it's great stuff, and you wind up loving the guy, even though it's mostly making fun of the guy. Then there's Ray Romano. There's 100 ways to do this, but the wife is always very, very wise in his comedy and makes Ray look like an idiot. I've never seen it done what you're doing, which is just this huge outpouring of love without anything like an insult, with complimenting her for being funnier than you are. And I wonder how conscious that was, but also if you think that is in some ways a burden you put for yourself, or a little bit of a hurdle, or inimical, I don't know, whatever that word is, the opposite of what usually makes us laugh. I'm this guy who's super in love, and I got nothing bad to say about her, and you're probably going to envy me at the end of this.
Inimical. But number one, thank you. What a generous question. I don't know, again, if it was like meticulously, like explicitly thought out to be this way. Here's one of the advantages, one of the benefits that Rini brings to my life and comedy, or to the comedy in my life, is like, at least she came with me to Edinburgh in 2018 and 23. But in 2018, when I was doing the show there that would become the album AKA, which I talked to you about probably 5 years ago, she watched almost every show that I did and like took notes. And she has, a real, like, when she likes something, when she has like special interests that she can dedicate many, hours and tons of attention and effort to for fun. It's a joy to her. And she loves me and loves my comedy and wants to help. And one time she once said, she said, I don't think I could ever be a comedian because I like things to make sense. And so much comedy like has joke logic to it, but not real world logic to it. Like, Andy Kindler years ago was on Letterman, and he did a fun bit where he's just like going after, he's like, some comedians are like, sugar-free gum, who's that for? Like, diabetics, And so you understand that Rini would like listen to me tell a joke that would work, that had like the joke logic was strong and absolutely totally like nobody in the audience was ever like, what are you talking about? But she would be like, what you're saying, like literally, like if you look at the words, like this is not true or does not make sense. Have you thought about trying, like, what if you said it like this? Or is there a way that it could get the whole joke across, but also be real?
Yes. Was she right about that?
It turns out. I mean, initially I was as hesitant as you were for that 1 second. Like I honestly was like, hey.
I was trying to pronounce inimicable, the world's worst word. Just found that out as it tried to make its way into my mouth.
But I was like, coming from a place of like, hey, it's working. I don't want to like take it apart and put it back together and find out that it doesn't work. I mean, what am I worried about? Well, then just do it the original way. But I trusted her, and I was like, I don't even know if it was like this, but it could have been some element of like, okay, I'll try it your way. Oh, it works better. Like I could sometimes just do it my way and then add another thing. And then I get an extra joke where it's also the truth. So, because I really do like other than, here's the only person who I think I don't mind not knowing what's true is Nathan Fielder. I'm like, I don't know, like, truly what is going on for real in that guy's life and mind, and I don't care. It's delightful. It's wonderful. It's a mystery.
Are there airplanes? Have any of them crashed?
But there's, like, I saw a comedian once who was telling jokes about, my girlfriend picks these pants out for me and they're a little tight, and she's pregnant with our first child. It's a girl. I want it to be a boy. And afterwards, I was talking to him and I was like, so is that all, like, is that all true about your girlfriend? He's like, oh, I don't have a girlfriend. I was like, what? Why? What is happening?
And also, he was wearing a skirt.
Yeah, that's, I was like, but truly, I'm not saying that, like, you know, Anthony Jeselnik, I'm fine. Like, I know what's true and what's not true. Like, I do love, in his most recent special, like, the jokes about Joe Rogan, the feud, because I'm like, those are real. Those are what he really thinks and believes, and his villainous character delivers them equally to the jokes that were like, clearly, he is not, you know, murdering.
Did you see him interviewing Tig Notaro, asking her, who is your least favorite comedian?
Oh, no.
Yeah, she mouths it. There's a huge debate about what it is, and this is where the comments actually help.
Oh, that's beautiful. But yeah, so of course, be a character, absolutely. And I just think I like the audience to know what is real. Like,
yes,
not everything that I say is literally 100% true with no exaggeration. But I remember seeing Stephen Colbert interviewed when he was still doing the Colbert Report as a character, right? And I remember the interviewer talking to him, not on the Colbert Report, he's like, the interviewer said something like, okay, so who am I talking to? Stephen Colbert, the character, or Stephen Colbert, the human? And Stephen Colbert's just like, well, who do you want to talk to? Like, who would you like to answer the question? And it, like, just took the wind out of the guy's sail. It was like, it was perfect. But
sounds like there was a lot of wind in there.
There was a lot of wind in there that needed to come out, and then the calm sea was able to be traversed easily. And Stephen Colbert's like, yeah, as the character, I would say this, and as, you know, my real human self, I would say this. And I love that because, like, why not? Like, it doesn't have to be a trick. It doesn't have, like, as long as, and so if it is, I mean, if what I'm doing takes more, like, higher, if it's a higher difficulty level to have this, I mean, it is my perspective. And so I do think in creating the jokes, they're in making sure that the jokes are funny or as funny as they need to be, as they want to be. Maybe they do have to be funnier if they're not fitting in the slot where somebody's like, oh, this guy hates his wife. Right. I know that one. Yeah. Oh, a little variation on that one. But this guy doesn't. Is he ever going to hate his wife? When's the shoe got to drop? He's got to hate his wife. The show's over. He didn't hate his wife. Oh, man, I hate my wife. Okay. But so, yeah, I appreciate the question. And yeah, I mean, it's just, in some ways, I remember I had a birthday show at Union Hall 7, 8, 9 years ago, and two of the people on it, I had, or on it or at it. I know Chris Gethard was on the show, and my friend Paul Barman, the rapper.
DJ.
MC Paul Barman.
Yes.
He was definitely, he might have been on the show, or he might have just come to the show, but I remember being a part of a conversation.
Was it a birthday show of yours at Union Hall where Paul Barman was there? Maybe this was the show.
It could be. I think this one was years earlier.
Okay.
But it could be.
Okay.
But I remember Chris Gethard, Paul asked Chris, like, why do you only tell true stories? Like in your comedy. And Chris said something like, he's like, I'm not good at making stuff up. He's just like, I don't know if that's true, but he's just like, for him, that's his art. His art is the stories of his life and the way that they come out, these, this beautiful, creative, artistic, just descriptions of life in New Jersey with his family of origin or his friends or his family of creation. And like, yeah, and we don't want him to, like, if he tried to be Anthony Jeselnik, it wouldn't make any sense. I mean, it just won't come out that way. And for me, I feel like when I started, I definitely had some jokes that were like, I don't know, weird, just joke equations, like a Hedbergian or Dimitri Martinian, or Stephen Wright-esque, where I'm like, I had a joke that was like, I was in LA and there was an earthquake and it destroyed everything at the Etch-a-Sketch Museum. I'm like, what is it? I've never, at that point, I'd never even been to LA. Like, nothing true about it. There's no museum. Like, what even is it? It's smoke. It's a sand mandala. It's an Etch-a-Sketch. It disappears like itself. That's pretty fun. And so, some of my jokes are still like that, just like weird, oddities and absurdities that delight me. And the truth of them is that they delight me. Like, you know Jacqueline Novak, I'm sure.
Yeah, oh, God, she's great.
We were
great
in.
Hair.
Oh yeah, we were in. She was in Edinburgh doing the show that would become her special "Get on Your Knees" in 2018. She was working on it for a long time, and so I saw one of the first versions of it. And she saw we were there together, and I remember her saying to me once around then, she said, "Myq, a lot of people might say that your comedy is about words," but she's like, I don't think that's what it is. She's like, I think that your comedy is about a man obsessed with words. And I was like, I don't know if I'd say obsessed as the right word, but okay, I take your point. I see what you're saying.
Well, the etymology of obsessed would indicate, yeah.
But so now, like, I love and I try to embody in my own way of this, the Paul F. Tompkins opening line of one special. He says, I'm Paul F. Tompkins and I do Paul F. Tompkins based comedy. I'm like, that's perfect. And that's what, Reggie Watts is doing, Reggie Watts based comedy. Maria Bamford based comedy. Like everyone, like no one is better than anyone.
You're doing
at their
Myq
best.
and Rini based comedy now.
I am now.
Rini is now Myq.
I have now doubled in a way. I've been thinking about this. I forget. I feel like it's a David Cross joke. Maybe it's multiple people's, or this concept of if you are a gay man in a relationship with another gay man who's about your size, then you've doubled your wardrobe. And I feel that has happened for me comedically, creatively, spiritually. With Rini, we're not the same physical size, but our senses of humor are aligned enough that because she's not a comedian, and this, is where a lot of this special comes from, is like I have doubled my, ingredient list for what can be, and I've doubled the comedy menu.
Myq Kaplan's, I'll even say it correctly. Well, you also dress a little complimentary, which is really nice. That's the reveal at the end. And you can find this in Myq Kaplan's new special. It's on YouTube. It is called, as you may have surmised, Rini. And also, if you've listened to this, you could tell Myq and I don't really get along much in common. But if you listen to this and he promised he would get to a topic that he didn't get to, write in and we will have him address every unplucked fruit from the tree, because we don't want to have you, as the funny you should mention listener, hanging out there saying, but wait a minute, Myq promised that he'd be doing a little riff on the hummingbird. Thank you, Myq Kaplan.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. You are cool and I appreciate you for having me. It was heavenly. Thank you.